My name is Eva. I'm 34 years old, and I own a logistics consulting firm in Denver, Colorado that closed last year at $3.2 million in revenue, with 12 employees and a client roster that includes two Fortune 500 warehousing accounts. My family calls me disowned. My accountant calls me the fastest growing woman-owned firm in the state 2 years running. Both of those things are true at the same time, and that's the part nobody in my family ever wanted to understand. Right now, somewhere in an assisted living community outside Boulder, there's a manila folder sitting on a folding table next to a sheet cake at my grandfather's welcome gathering. Inside that folder are 11 invoices for signed delivery slips and a bank transfer confirmation for $14,500. In about 6 minutes of this story, my Aunt Carol is going to stand up in front of my entire family, sparkling cider in hand, and tell them I refuse to help move my own grandfather. And then a woman named Renata from the front desk is going to hand her that exact folder. Eva doesn't care about family. She never has. That's what Carol said to my mother on March 2nd, 2025, 3 days before Grandpa Walter's move. In a phone call my mother later admitted she never meant for me to hear the recording of. If you're watching this right now, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is for you, and hit subscribe, because this channel is basically a support group for people who found out the hard way that blood doesn't automatically mean loyalty. Let me take you back to where this actually started. I grew up in Loveland, Colorado, the older of two cousins raised practically as sisters under one roof after my mother and Aunt Carol decided to split a duplex to save money when I was 7. Carol's daughter, my cousin Brianna, got the bigger bedroom facing the street, the dance lessons on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and a used Honda Civic the week she turned 16. I got hand-me-down winter coats and a part-time cashier job at a Safeway starting the summer I turned 15, folding my tips into a coffee can under my bed. Nobody ever said it out loud, but everyone in that duplex knew Brianna was the favorite. Grandpa Walter was the one exception. He used to slip me $20 bills folded into the spines of paperback westerns and tell me, quietly, over the smell of his pipe tobacco, that I had the kind of stubborn that pays off eventually. He was right, eventually. I studied supply chain management at Colorado State, graduated in May of 2014 with $31,000 in student debt, and spent 6 years climbing from overnight dispatcher to regional operations manager at a freight company before I left in 2020 to start my own firm with $9,000 in savings, a secondhand laptop, and a card table I still keep in my office as a reminder. The rupture happened on October 11th, 2021, at 7:22 p.m. in my mother's kitchen in Loveland, over a pot roast that was getting cold on the stove while everyone waited for my answer. Carol's restaurant, a 22-table Italian place on 4th Street called Bellini's, was 6 months behind on its lease, and Carol needed a co-signer for a $180,000 SBA loan to keep it open. My mother asked me first, gently, twisting her napkin. Then Carol asked less gently. Then my grandfather's brother, Uncle Ray, said the 4 words that decided everything. Family helps family, Eva. I said no. One word, said once calmly. I explained that co-signing meant I'd personally owe $180,000 if Bellini's failed, and every projection I'd run 3, using real occupancy numbers pulled off the county assessor's site the night before, said it would fail within 18 months. It failed in 14. Carol didn't yell. She just looked at me across that cooling pot roast, set her fork down, and said, "Then you're not really part of this family, are you?" My mother didn't correct her. I remember the specific weight of that silence, not sadness exactly, more like watching a door close from the other side of glass. I didn't cry. I finished my water, thanked my mother for dinner, and drove home to my 1-bedroom apartment on Wilson Avenue, where I sat on my kitchen floor for exactly 9 minutes with my coat still on before I opened my laptop and kept working on a client proposal due the next morning. That's the year I started what I still call the binder, a physical accordion folder where I kept every email, every voicemail transcript, every screenshot of every group text where my family discussed me like I wasn't eventually going to see it. I didn't start it for revenge. I started it because somewhere around year 2 of silence, I stopped trusting my own memory of what had actually been said. The person who became my actual family during those years was Denise Whitfield, the woman who'd hired me as a 19-year-old dispatcher and later became my first investor when I launched my firm. Denise co-signed my first equipment lease, $42,000, without blinking, the same month my own mother wouldn't return my birthday voicemail. Denise used to say, over coffee at a diner on Colfax that smelled permanently of burnt toast, blood tells you who you're related to. Time tells you who your family is. She said it so often I eventually got it stitched, in small letters, into the lining of my first real business blazer. Year 1 of silence. One Christmas card, returned unopened, not at this address written across it in Brianna's looping handwriting, even though I hadn't moved. Year 2. My firm hit $650,000 in annual revenue, and I hired my first 2 employees. Year 3. $1.4 million and a profile in a regional business journal that Brianna apparently screenshotted and sent to Carol with the caption, "Guess she's doing fine without us." A screenshot I only saw because my cousin Tyler, Carol's younger son, forwarded it to me at 11:47 p.m. with the message, "Thought you should know they still watch everything you do." The reconnection started on January 6th, 2025, with a text from my mother. "Grandpa's not doing well on his own anymore. We need to talk about next steps, and honestly, we could use your help figuring out the money side." 4 years of silence, and the first message back was about money. I didn't say that out loud. I just said I'd help figure it out. What I found out through Tyler 2 weeks later, from a family group chat he'd left open on a shared iPad at his own kitchen counter, was the real plan. Carol wanted Grandpa's house, worth $410,000, appraised that January, sold immediately, with the proceeds split before he even moved, and her share earmarked to cover the remaining Bellini's debt she still owed the SBA, personally, roughly $61,000 of it. Grandpa hadn't agreed to any of it. Grandpa didn't even know it yet. I called an estate attorney on January 20th, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Priya Anand, and spent an hour and a half in her office learning that Grandpa had never actually signed a durable power of attorney naming anyone, which meant nobody, not Carol, not my mother, had any legal authority to sell that house or move him anywhere without his own signature on the paperwork. So I drove to Loveland myself, sat with Grandpa Walter at his kitchen table for 4 hours on February 2nd, the smell of his coffee percolator filling the room, and just listened to what he actually wanted, which was simple. Somewhere close to his church, somewhere with a dog he could visit on weekends and nobody making decisions for him behind his back. I found Sunset Pines, assisted living in Boulder, 11 minutes from his church. I hired Rocky Mountain Movers myself, paid the $14,500 deposit in balance from my own account on February 19th, and drove up twice that week to sign off on delivery slips because Grandpa's hands shake too much now to sign clearly. So the movers had me co-sign as his authorized point of contact, its own kind of legal irony I didn't appreciate until 3 weeks later. That's how we got to March 8th, 2025, the welcome gathering at Sunset Pines, folding chairs arranged in a loose circle, a sheet cake from Safeway with blue icing that read, "Welcome home." Walter, string lights someone had taped along the community room windows. Carol stood up with a glass of sparkling cider and told the room, my mother, Brianna, Uncle Ray, 6 or 7 of Grandpa's new neighbors, that she'd basically organized this whole move herself, and that it was a shame some people couldn't be bothered to show up for their own grandfather. I didn't raise my voice. I asked Renata, the activities coordinator standing near the coffee station, if Rocky Mountain Movers had left copies of the invoices with the facility, since I'd specifically requested 3 copies for exactly this kind of confusion. She walked over with a manila folder. Inside it, 11 invoices for signed delivery slips, all with my signature, my payment method, my phone number listed as the primary contact. I set the folder on the table next to the sheet cake and said, "You can be the one who tells the story, Carol, or you can be the one whose name is actually on the paperwork. You don't get to be both." The room went quiet in that specific way rooms go quiet when everyone's doing math in their heads. Carol's face did something I hadn't seen before, not anger first, but something closer to fear. Fast and unguarded, gone in maybe 2 seconds. "I just wanted them to see me do something right for once," she said, quieter than I'd ever heard her sound. Then, almost as fast, she straightened up and said I was twisting things as usual, making everything about money. But 2 seconds is enough. I saw it. Grandpa, sitting closest to the cake in his good cardigan, saw it too. Grandpa Walter didn't say much that day, but 11 days later he called Priya Anand's office himself and named me his healthcare proxy and power of attorney. Not because I asked, but because in his words, you're the one who actually showed your work. Carol found out through my mother, not from me, and quietly stopped posting in our family group chat 2 weeks after that, on her own, with no push from anyone. That's a consequence, not a punishment. I never brought the folder up again, never mentioned it at another gathering, never posted a word about it online until right now. She did that math herself and didn't like the number it added up to. Tyler texted me the week after the gathering. I'm sorry I only ever forwarded you stuff instead of saying something in person. I should have said something at the table that day. I told him the door's open whenever he wants to walk through it, and he's been to visit Grandpa with me twice since. Once bringing a chess set Grandpa still hasn't beaten me at. Here's what I actually learned in my own words, not the version you've heard 100 times before. Love that only shows up when it needs something from you isn't love. It's an invoice you never agreed to sign. And the only thing that protects you from paying it forever is keeping your own paperwork straight, literally and emotionally. So that when someone tries to rewrite what happened, the truth is already sitting in a folder somewhere, dated, signed, and ready. If this story hit close to home, subscribe, drop a comment telling me which family member in your life would be the Carol, and share this with the one person you know who still keeps their own binder. I'll see you in the next one.